Well, welcome everybody to Roundabout Books Romance Writers in Conversation event. My name is Julie and I'm the events manager at Roundabout Books. We very much hope to be doing in-person events sometime in 2021, but until then, we are so excited that authors are making the time to spend evenings with us via Zoom, which everyone is, love and hate right now. And it's a little cold where we are here in Central Oregon. I think yesterday it was 70 and today's it's like 35. So I think this is a perfect time to talk about romance books and warm everybody up just a little bit. So I'm going to introduce our authors. First, we have Sarah Smith, who is a copywriter turned author who wants to make the world a lovelier place, one kissing story at a time. Her previous book, why did I just forget the title of your first book?
It's okay. Faker. It's okay.
Oh my gosh. It was just like, whoop. Yes. Her previous book, Faker, came out last year. And we're going to be talking tonight about her new book, Simmer Down. And then we are joined by Denise Williams. It says, let's see here. I'm looking at your fun bio. There we go. Sorry. Wrote her first book in the second grade. I Hate You and its sequel, I Still Hate You, featured a tough, funny heroine, a quirky hero, witty banter, and a dragon. And tonight we are going to be talking about her book, How to Fail at Flirting, which unfortunately I think is the title of my life. So I think that's perfect. And I'm going to turn it over to you ladies because I am so excited to hear about both of your books and just all the fun it is to be a romance writer. So take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much, Julie. That was a lovely introduction. I really appreciate that.
I very much appreciate that your hair matches my sweater. Like, that was very wonderfully color coordinated.
Yes, so good. Yeah. So I'm super excited to be doing this with you, Denise. Denise and I have done like an Instagram live recently together. So that was really fun. And we also like DM each other a lot on social media. So I feel like we talk a lot more than we probably actually talk. So this is really fun to actually like talk to you and look at your face.
I know. And usually I'm just coming to you in a panic about something as the newbie, and you are the seasoned veteran who can show me, the ropes. And so, yes, this feels lovely. I've got my cocktail and I'm excited to chat with you.
Yay. Yeah. I said no to the cocktail because, I've been doing a lot of that in my normal life. So it's water for me tonight. And then maybe later I'll get a little crazy and have a cocktail. But yeah, I just think this is really cool because, my book Simmer Down came out earlier, or I guess last month. And then your book, How to Fail at Flirting, comes out in the beginning of December 1st. So I'm just really, I'm just really excited to chat about our books. So I guess do you want to start off? We can maybe like talk about what our books are about and then.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So so Simmer Down is my most recent release. It's an enemies to lovers romance about two food truck rivals who are vying for the same very coveted parking spot in a gorgeous beach in Maui. The main character is Nikki. She runs a Filipino food truck with her mom. And the eventual love interest is Callum, and he runs a British pub food truck with his brother. So they're just, trying to take each other down. And eventually that heat turns into a really hot secret romance. And I think it's perfect for the weather because it's gross and cold right now, like Julie said. But I promise this will heat things up for you if you need something new to read.
So ironically, I'm in Iowa and it's like 70 degrees here. So it's lovely in the middle of November. So I don't really need warming, and I'll cover up like the bottom part of this. But like Sarah really should underscore this part of the book because like the heat and the chemistry between the two characters, I loved it. I devoured the book just so fast, which I did your first book too. But the heat and the spice was just fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I don't have the finished copy yet, so that's coming soon, but I have this lovely bound Word document that I've become very close to. So How to Fail at Flirting is out in 24 days, not that I'm counting, and it is about Professor Nia Turner, who is math education professor who's on the other side of abusive relationship and really has decided she's in a rut, she's unhappy where she is, and with the help of some slightly meddling friends, makes a to-do list to kind of get back on track because she's very type A, and a to-do list is the way that you get things done. So, she checks things off, she flirts with the bartender, she kind of fails at that. She attempts the one-night stand, she definitely fails at that. And she meets someone new, which actually goes pretty well. So along the way, she ends up flirting with him, and despite the fails, that kind of works out, but also flirting with career ruin and flirting with really all of the possibilities in her life, and then eventually flirting with love.
I was lucky enough to read an advanced copy of How to Fail at Flirting, and it is great. I think you guys should put this on your TBR immediately. It's cute, but it's also really, emotional and relatable, and there's some really great sexy scenes in it too. And Jake is just, I wish you could bring book boyfriends to life, because I would totally bring Jake to life.
I do too. My husband knows if that is ever possible, like, we're gonna have to come up with an arrangement for something, because he's gonna really need to step up his game.
Sorry, I have a similar arrangement with my husband, I guess, too. Like real people I don't care about, but like book boyfriends, thank God they can't come to life, because I would be the worst wife ever, probably. So
ironically, as you talk about writing romance, there's a plot bunny in there somewhere of the book boyfriends who come to life. Maybe they wouldn't destroy a marriage, because that sort of falls outside of romance, but maybe there's something to write there.
That's true. That's a great idea. Get some like magical realism and then take it into the romance rom-com realm. I love that.
Okay, well, you and me, we're on this next project. So did you always want to be a writer, or how did you get into writing romance?
I always wanted to write a book, like ever since I was a little kid and I knew how to read and write. I don't know, I think I just had like a weird imagination, and I liked writing stuff. And it was just one of the interests that like held or stuck with me when I was a kid all the way till when I was an adult. So I think, and I feel like also, I don't know if anyone else has worked in copywriting, but I feel like being in that field, like everybody's eventual goal was to write a book someday. So it just felt kind of like I'm just doing what everybody else wants to do eventually too. And a few years ago, I moved to Bend and I didn't really know anybody and I had a lot of free time. So I'm like, well, I guess I should probably write a book now. It sounds really, but I mean, it's amazing. I love it. And I really enjoy doing this, and I can't really imagine doing anything else right now. How about you, Denise? Has this been something that you've always wanted to do your whole life?
Actually, well, kind of. Despite writing those first books in the second grade, I just always loved to write, but I never thought it was an actual career I would pursue. I have a PhD, I work in academia, and so while I was always an avid fiction reader, once I got into my graduate program, it was pretty much just all academic reading and writing, and then binging Netflix to regain some sanity on the weekends. And so I set it aside, and I hadn't written anything in a really long time. And when I started commuting, I had about an hour and a half every day in the car, and I started listening to audiobooks. And romance was definitely the ones. I did a couple lit fic and some thrillers, and then I hit romance, and then I kept going. And so then I was like, you know what, maybe I could write this. But I really didn't give it any thought until my son was born, and I was just buried in work and momming and my academic writing, which is I'm very passionate about, but isn't like fun. And so I just started sitting down to write this book, and I thought it would be a fun little short story about ex-boyfriends. And it wasn't. And so that became just like this an escape. So I'm pretty new to romance and very new to writing. This is the first book I've ever written, except for those ones I did in the second grade. So I feel like I'm learning a lot about kind of everything with this first book and then my next books that are coming.
I'm really impressed by that, because I have a million unfinished manuscripts that I tried to write, and a couple of manuscripts that I did write before I wrote my first published book, Faker. So I bow to you. This is your first book and it's published. That's amazing.
To be fair, I rewrote this one several times, so maybe that counts as multiple books.
And I guess I think we all know how rewriting and revising is like a huge part of publishing your book. So that's fun stuff. Yeah. That's, I was gonna ask you, was there anything that like inspired you to write Jake and Naya and How to Fail at Flirting? Because they're such a cute couple and their romance is just adorable. As much as it is steamy and serious too, it's just like they're so cute and they feel like real people to me when I was reading them.
Naya just kind of always came to me. We share a lot of the same voice, and she was just sort of always the character I sat down to write. The book opens with her in a classroom dealing with kind of a jackass student, which is pretty common to anybody who's worked with students or 19-year-olds. And so that for me was just where it started, and I kind of knew her voice from the beginning. Jake was actually inspired by a guy at a bar who hit on my friends and I when we were on a business trip. And I was sort of oblivious to this, but after we finished, my friend was like, yeah, he was hitting on you. And I was like, no, was he? She's like, yeah, you were flirting with him. I was like, I definitely was not doing that. And so, that ended, and he bought us drinks, and then I never saw him again. But very generous. Thank you, stranger in Texas. But I thought, what if I was single and that went a different way, and you sort of met the love of your life in this sort of cliche met at a bar situation? And so that's kind of where Jake came from. And then I just took every swoony expectation I ever had of my husband and every other guy I've dated and just put it into one person.
I love that. So it's a mix of real life and fantasy, which I like to think romance books, that's essentially what they are, I love that. That's so cute.
Yeah. So I really am thankful to that random guy in Texas, both for the gin and tonic and, and for inspiring this career. Good on you. Yeah. How about you?
I wonder if like someday he'll, I don't know, walk into a bookstore and see your book there and I don't, maybe he'll read it and think like, wow, this sounds very familiar about how I act. Or
I hope not. Very much hope not.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe then, yeah, probably not. But it's funny like how, I feel like it's funny how like inspiration kind of strikes at weird times and different moments, because like when I was writing Simmer Down, like there wasn't like it didn't result, like I've never had like a flirty or contentious meeting with like a British guy that led to me thinking like, oh, I should write this in a book and a story. I just I think I just like my inspo is a lot less exciting. Like I just really like Maui and I love food and I love British accents. So.
I think all of those things are equally exciting.
Yes, yeah, that's true. Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is like a fun question that I thought we could, I don't know, both answer, but like okay. who would you fan cast in How to Fail at Flirting? Like who would you want to play your characters if they were in a movie or show or something?
Yes, I can speak it into the universe actually, because I pictured Henry Cavill the entire time I was writing Jake. But if he's getting a little aged for the role by the time we get there, I think Chris Evans could do a wonderful job as well. So I'm open to both options if anybody's listening. I'd be happy with those. But that Henry Cavill is really just who I pictured when I was writing the book. For Naya, she, for a long time, I pictured Meghan Markle, but I don't think she's taking a lot of acting gigs right now. She's got a couple other things going on. Right. But probably her or Tessa Thompson or someone like that.
I love that. Those are great. That's an excellent fan cast. I always wonder sometimes, like when you see a book made into a movie or a show, you wonder like, is this who the author pictured, or like did they have a lot of control over the casting? Probably not. So
I'm guessing not, but I think in our own heads, we are like producers and executives of the film industry. And so, yeah, like we've got this locked up.
Right, exactly. Like I don't know, I just think it's like fun to think of it. Like, the world's crazy right now, so I think about these happy, fluffy things that like aren't stressful at all, and it's just fun to like when I fan cast Simmer Down, I think I would want the guy from I don't know if anybody else watched Falling in Love, that rom-com on Netflix with Kusina. It came out like a year or 2 years ago. He's like
I didn't watch it, but I remember it coming out.
Yeah, like he's that Australian actor with he looks like a Viking. He looks like a really hot Viking because he's blonde and he has all these muscles, and yeah, so sorry, I was picturing.
I'm here for that. You're good.
Yeah. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So yeah, Julian's all about it. Thank you, Julian. Yes. He's super good looking. Yeah, I can't remember his name. But his name's not really important in this scenario, so that's fine. But I don't know if anybody watched Pretty Little Liars, but I thought Shay Mitchell from Pretty Little Liars would make a really great Nikki, just because she's very tenacious and willing to stand up for herself and her mom, and isn't afraid to like get into it with somebody if she has to, but she loves her family and she's loyal and all that good stuff. And to be totally honest, there's not like a whole bunch of Filipino biracial, actors in Hollywood. So like fan casting is a little bit limited, but that's okay. I think, that's, yeah.
Same. There's a Pinterest board I could keep of biracial, multiracial actresses. Actually, I sort of laughed because my second book will come out next fall. And when I wrote it, I never described the characters, aside from him being kind of built and her having brown eyes. Like, I never described them at all. And so when we were designing the cover, they asked me, what do they look like? I was like, well, sometimes he's biracial and sometimes he's white, sometimes he's blonde, and sometimes he could have red hair. Here's 17 different images. And then her, like, here's 12 different people who look nothing alike. But for me, I thought, I always love to kind of put myself in a story and like imagine it as the reader. And so as an author with that book, I really did a lot of that until I realized, I probably have to give some description of these people so it's consistent. This Pinterest board is not going to cut it. We got to cull that down a little bit.
No, you know what though? I like that because I feel like a big audience is going to be reading your book. So if you can make it, if you can make the reader feel like it can be anybody experiencing the story, I think that's a really special quality to put in your book. I mean, I think it's great to include, physical attributes of characters if that's what you feel compelled to do as the writer. But like, I think there is something really special about being able to write something where everybody can picture themselves as the main character because you weren't super specific about every little detail in there.
Especially if you get to picture yourself next to the Viking. I mean, who doesn't want that?
Right, yeah, that's why I paused a while ago. Like, oh yeah, that'd be really fun. Like, yeah, oh my gosh, yeah. And I'm thinking about it again, and I can't talk right now, so I better stop thinking about it.
You should create, like, because you can do the custom Zoom background. You should create sort of this montage in the background. I'll work on something to send you.
I would love that because you're really good. I love your Photoshops. If anybody wants to see some amazing Photoshop, follow Denise on Twitter, her Photoshop. She'll throw up a picture every once in a while and it's hilarious. I love it.
Okay, but asterisk, it's really not good. It's somebody's head pasted on somebody's body. I think when Sarah's first book came out, I found sort of a hot dude picture and Photoshopped the book into his hand. So that might have been my better work, but.
You had me hooked at that moment. I'm like, this is my person. I want to be friends with her. She gets me. So.
If only there was a career that involved bad Photoshop and making graphs, I would be all in that career.
You would be like a millionaire. You would be like the CEO of this company, and it would be amazing.
Okay, let me work on that.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if 2020 is the best year to branch out and start a bad Photoshop indie consulting company and to like throw everything into that, but I guess you got to go big or go home.
Yeah, I feel like I can see that, but it's also like the year where anything literally can and will happen. So this could be, this could be the year where it takes off, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe Henry Cavill would fall so in love with my bad Photoshop, and he'd say, "Hey, by chance, have you written any books?" And I could say, "Actually, yes, I have. You need a star for the film?" And I would say, "Actually, I do." And it could just work out all together. Like the stars could align.
I like you said, you speak it into the world, into the universe. It's gonna happen now. You know that it will. This will happen. That's, oh my gosh, that's, so just thinking about that is like giving me so much happiness and joy right now.
So what was we talked a little bit about writing, but going back and thinking about that revising part and the editing part, what was the hardest thing about editing for you, for either Simmer Down or Faker or both?
Okay, so for me, probably the hardest part of the revising process was writing the dark moment for both books. So like anyone who reads romance, like that's the moment where like your characters, something happens and it makes it seem like they're not going to be together, or something drives them apart and you think all hope is lost. Eventually it'll all be fine, but in the context of a romance, that moment, that dark moment, is just like really wrenching usually. And I just have a really hard time, like, I don't know, putting myself there and making my characters suffer. And it's ridiculous because they're not real people. It's not like this is actually happening to them, but it's just so hard to, I don't know, for me as a writer to write the scene to make it wrenching and believable enough for readers to really feel invested in, I think. But I feel like revising has helped me figure out how I can get to that point. So it takes me a few times, but I feel like I'm getting better at it. And I think the manuscript I'm working on right now, I think I've gotten better at it. And I think the dark moment is a little bit better. And I don't think I'm going to need to overhaul it that much like I did with Simmer Down and with Baker. Yeah, how about you, Denise? Are you somebody who gets tripped up by the dark moment? Or are you okay with making your...
I actually have no problem making my characters suffer, so that's they maybe suffer a little too much. Well, I mentioned like this is the first book I'd written, and so I learned so much about craft along the way when I started writing How to Fail at Flirting. Like I had no idea about sort of plot structure and how the arc should go. Like I was just throwing romantic moments into a bucket, and eventually it got to the end, and I thought it was great. And then I realized, like there's probably 30,000 more words here than there need to be, and 15,000 of them are sex scenes. And so, so I'm very much an overwriter. So a lot of my editing is cutting things out and kind of making them a bit more concise and flow well. And so I think I'm learning that a little bit better. Consequently, I do have several deleted sex scenes that may make it into my newsletter from How to Fail at Flirting that I really love writing, but just didn't need to be there. But once I get started with cutting things out, I get really excited about it, which is, I don't know what that says about me, that I love to like hurt my characters and then take their things away, but probably nothing good about my parenting style. But like once I get going, it's almost like this competition with myself of, okay, like how can I make this sentence better? How can I make this paragraph more concise? Like how can I cut? And so that once I get into that, that's kind of fun. I think that's just my competitive nature with myself.
I think that's great. Like I think it shows that you, like you understand the process. Cause I feel like there are some people who, when it comes to revising, it's really hard for them to, cut this scene or completely rework this part of their book. So I think that goes to show what a pro you are, that you're just completely willing to just, scrap this and, cut it. But you can always put it for your newsletter, which I'm super excited about, these love scenes.
Well, one of them has all told in Star Wars references, which that's a joke in the book because the hero's never seen Star Wars. I've never actually watched Star Wars. It's been on in my presence, and maybe I saw one of the new ones in like 2002 or something, but I've never actually paid attention to it. And so yeah, there's a whole scene that's in Star Wars references, and there's another one about cake. So Yeah, I'm sure those will make it out into the world eventually, because I really enjoy writing those scenes. And like reading yours in Faker was such a good that's good inspiration, but I just love like how you keep it really steamy and you get all this emotion and all this energy from the characters, but it's still hot and sexy and on the page and open door and, you know, a little risque here and there. And I thought that that was great, because that's what I like to read, and that's what I try to kind of emulate in writing, just because I think that conveys so much of what that human experience and what those relationship connections, you know, can be.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for saying that. That's really kind of you. That means the world that anybody would read something I wrote and think such nice things about that. So thank you. I I always really like writing love scenes or sexy scenes, and I know that some other writers, it really bothers them to have to, or they don't feel comfortable completely writing something like that, because it is like really intimate, like you said, both physically and emotionally. But I don't know. Again, I don't know what that says about me, but that's like my favorite scene to write. I must be like,
It says you're awesome.
thank you. Thanks, you guys. You're so good. I don't, I mean, you said that you enjoy writing those scenes, right, Denise? Like you don't have a problem with that. Yeah.
During quarantine, I was just fiddling with some books. They're not, hopefully they'll be kind of down the line in the stream, but I was just wanting to write and fiddling with some things. And it was quarantine and everything was nuts. And I was home with a 4-year-old all day. And I sat down and I was like, oh, let me write this scene and this scene and this scene. And I was like, well, how can I piece these together in a story? So let me build a story around these 3 love scenes that I wrote and love. So yeah, I do enjoy writing them. And I think I've gotten better at balancing like what should be 2 chapters all up in it and what can be kind of a fade to black sexy moment, and giving that balance so it sort of keeps that tension.
Yeah, I actually love that you said that that's how you wrote during quarantine, because I feel like that's how I wrote too when when I was first starting to write romance and Faker. Like I just felt really compelled to write these random scenes, most of which were sexy scenes, and then I just went back and connected the dots later. And it's just really interesting how each writer's process.
Well, and I think in romance, not in every book, I know in How to Fail at Flirting, is the characters are able to sort of, especially the heroine, is able to convey so much physically that she isn't like recognizing about herself or able to say verbally or even to articulate in terms of trust and in terms of affection and even like reliance on somebody. Like those are all things she feels a pretty strong connection early on, but she isn't in an emotional space where she would ever be able to articulate that or really say that, even to herself, but that you can show that kind of in that physical act. And I know that's true for so many people. And so I think that that's a power and something that's sort of unique to romance. Not that that can't be shown in other genres, but that's sort of our specialty. That's kind of our bread and butter, is, you know, how can you convey this emotion and character in this moment, in this scene?
Yeah, I love that about this genre, because I mean, like I was a pretty avid reader growing up, like I think most writers and authors are, and I read a lot of different stuff, and it was hard sometimes to connect with the material, or in school, like you would read all those literary required reading books that, I mean, whatever, they're great, but like, I don't know, you're 16, do you really want to read like Shakespeare all day, every day? Probably not. I mean, cool if you do, and no.
Okay, I was the nerd who memorized Romeo and Juliet when I was 14, but it was mainly because of the Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes movie.
Okay, sorry, I apologize. I didn't mean to like shame anybody who.
No, I own it. I felt no shame.
Good. I remember being that age and just not, or like not even Shakespeare, but like a lot of like, I don't know, like we read Henry David Thoreau, and I'm like, I don't understand the value of this.
Mostly a lot of old dead white dudes.
Yes, old dead white dudes that I just couldn't be bothered to care about. So when I started embracing, because I had always read romance as a kid, but you know, it was like people didn't really, I don't know, like people just didn't really think of it as a very lauded genre. So like they're just like, oh, you read that, why don't you read something else? And then I just got older and just realized, well, like, I'm just gonna read what I want to read, and this is what makes me happy. And I'm glad now that there is not as much. I mean, there's always going to be, I think romance will always get a lot of hate and stigma just because, you know, people are always going to be around to criticize whatever. But I like now how I feel like romance is really, I don't know if hitting a renaissance is the right word, but I feel like it's popular, and it's always been popular, but I feel like people are really giving it the attention and the respect that I think it's deserved for a really long time.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see that happening, and it's cool to be able to say, like, I'm part of this in my own little way, you know, writing my own little books and connecting with people who read them. And I love that, I don't know, that it, like you said, like I think it champions like emotion and pleasure, and especially female pleasure, and emotional maturity and emotional growth with the characters. And I think that's a really important and special thing to be part of. And sorry, I didn't mean to get so long-winded and like.
No, you're good. You're good. I was gonna say the teacher in me was ready to jump in when you called your books little books, and be like, listen, I own your books. They're not little.
Thank you. I just know,
I think about that too, because when I started reading romance and started, even before I was writing it, I did have this sense like, ooh, this isn't what I'm supposed to be reading. This isn't what like smart people read, or like educated people. And I distinctly remember I bought a copy of The Goldfinch. I had it in audio for my car, and I had it on my Kindle. And whenever somebody was going to be looking at that, I would quick switch over to The Goldfinch. I'd be like, oh yeah, I just started it. I've never read that book. Like, I own it. It's sitting on a shelf in my, on my Kindle and on my Audible. But I felt like, okay, that's like good reading, and that is safe. So if somebody sees that, they're not going to judge me that I'm listening to this book about sex or love or whatever it is. And at a certain point, it was really when I started writing, I was participating in this group with other women about kind of taking risks, and it was called kind of the Playing Big program, by the book by Tara Moore. And as part of that, we started talking about like the big thing that we wanted to do. And I was like, I want to write a book. And so that was the thing I set with that group. And at the same time, I was like, you know, I should just be like open about this. And so that's when I stopped like whispering, oh, I'm writing a book, it's romance. And I started just saying that and like normalizing it in academia, which is this, can be kind of a snobby place for literature. And I found so many other people who weren't talking about their romance reading either, who were in those same spaces. And even people who weren't, like I talk about it normally. And so if I'm meeting with somebody and says, oh, Denise is publishing a book, I'm like, yeah, it's a romance and it's super steamy. Or, you know, talk with students who are interested about romance. I actually taught a class on romance novels and patriarchy last year. I'll be teaching it again this year. And so just trying to be like open and set that up. And like circling back to that women's group I was in, that was just such a kind of an epiphany moment for me to, okay, like I'm going to do this big thing and I'm going to be really open about it and like tell people about it. And after that group, I started my own with a friend because we wanted to continue it. We're in our third year of the one that we started. And actually we have our last session of the semester the day the book comes out. And so that was like this sort of wonderful, not planned because we set the dates before I knew the book release date, but like kind of wonderful circularity and just thinking about how we talk about this genre that we love and how we just really need to destigmatize these kind of, again, patriarchal notions of romance being this sort of lesser thing because it so often serves women and people in marginalized identities.
Hey, Sarah.
Yeah.
I wanted to pop in really quick just because I like this kind of stuff and I have a degree in publishing. I've found two different sources that say that the romance / erotica genre is going to gross $1.44 billion this year. It's the highest selling genre of both print, ebook, and self-published books.
Yes,
it has been for years.
Yeah, thank you for saying that because that's like a stat that I always like to, I don't know the exact numbers obviously, but it's very well known that romance is the top selling genre of every genre that there is. And so, I mean, like it's such a powerful feeling to know, like, well, we're part of that. We're part of that industry. It's a very, I mean, like you said, Denise, like, screw the patriarchy, but like romance is a very woman focused genre. I think that other genres don't, I feel like, prioritize women in a way that romance does. So yeah, the more that we can just be part of it to help, like you said, destigmatize it and like take away the like there's no shame at all in reading romance. And I really wish that more people would, because I think there are a lot of lessons you could learn from reading a romance book.
You know, one of the coolest things about quarantine, I don't know that the list is that long of cool things, but it's that my husband and I were for a stretch both working at home and balancing the 4-year-old, but periodically we would both kind of be on calls in our offices, and I could hear him down the hall with his team and hear him like telling his team about my book things and about my book. He hasn't read my book, which we're having a moment about that, but that's cool, whatever. But like hearing him kind of relay these sort of publishing things and about romance to his team of like computer software developers has been very cool to kind of listen. I don't know if he knows I can hear when he's doing that. And I definitely should be focusing on my own work, but that has been a really kind of cool thing to hear him sort of learn about all of this kind of secondhand and convey that.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I love to hear, obviously it's great to see authors put their work out, but like to see them supported too by their partner or their friends or their family, and have their loved ones be proud of the work that they're putting out into the world. That's like a really cool feeling, or a really cool thing to see, in addition to feeling it too. And I feel like I don't know, when I started writing romance and trying to publish, like I just was blown away at the support that like the community online was, you know, were giving people who were both like published authors, but also like, hey, I'm an aspiring romance writer, but like people were equally as supportive of you, whether you were published or not. So that's really cool to see. And you know what? I think he should read your book. Your book is amazing. And
I agree. I'll just start reading parts to him.
Yes.
My dad has also not read my mom has read the book, but my dad has not read the book. And I told the story in a couple of other spaces, but I was on the phone with them and my mom asked to read it. And I was like, okay, let me redact a few scenes and then I'll send it to you. A few scenes, half the book. And so my dad said, oh, I want to read it too, but I don't want it censored. Don't take parts out for me. And then my parents are having this discussion between the two of them about whether or not my dad should read this novel that at that time was very much fuller of sex scenes. And so then it ended with my dad saying, well, I'm an adult. Don't censor me. I mean, I might have questions. And I was like, nope, okay, you're getting the censored version. So I was new to Scrivener and I thought I'd compiled the ebook fine. And I just took out all the scenes. I went through manually, and every time there was a sex scene, I just put in brackets and said, they are intimate. And then I sent it off to my parents. But I accidentally compiled it wrong, so they got all of the scenes. And my mom called me and said, wow, this is a little steamy. And I was like, no, it's really not. And I was like, stop reading right now. So my mom then kept reading the new version I sent her. My dad got about 3 paragraphs in and called and said, I think you need to change this. I really don't like the heroine's voice. Nobody would like think that about their students. Nobody would talk like that. I was like, Dad, you know that's like my voice, right? Like that's, this character is, you know, those are my words, those are my thoughts. Well, I don't think she comes off very well. I think you should change that. So he never read past those first few paragraphs. And the first 5 minutes of the audiobook dropped a couple weeks ago, and I sent it to him, and he listened. He's like, yeah, I think this voice is better. I don't know if that means you like January LaVoy better than me, but those words haven't really changed, so we'll just roll with that.
Oh my gosh, I mean, I can relate to that feeling, that cringe feeling of like your parents reading a sexual thing that you've written, like, oh my gosh. But that's a hilarious story, and I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at you. I'm just laughing at the humor in the situation. That's amazing.
Oh, laugh away. I was pretty tickled by it.
That your dad's reaction reminds me of my my husband's uncle bought Faker just really sweet of him. And he was like, I'm gonna read it, but I don't know if I can read the whole thing because, you know, it sounds a little seamy. I'm like, that's okay. I just appreciate that you were nice enough to buy it, and I understand it's not your cup of tea. So that was just, it's definitely weird when people that you're related to are reading like sex scenes that you've written, and I don't mean that in like a shaming way. I just mean like it's weird because it's like the same thing. Like you don't want to think about your parents intimate or like your brother in his, you know what I mean? Like no, it's just like it's, you know, it's good to be sex positive and supportive, but like you don't want to think about your loved ones or your family in that context.
I have some former teachers who have read the book or have pre-ordered the book. And so my 7th grade English teacher, I still keep in touch with on Facebook. And so I was like, oh gosh, I hope I got my, it's been copy edited, but I hope I got my commas right.
Right? Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And then my major professor for my master's program, I've talked to about the book a lot. And then my major professor for my PhD has read it. And I laughed because everybody else I'd shown it to was like, oh, about the love story or the chemistry or the conflict. And she's a professor, and my character's a professor. And the first thing she said, she set down the manuscript and said, does she have tenure or not? That's all I could focus on. And so for anybody in academia, I was like, oh, you know, that should be like spelled out more and a bigger deal, because that would kind of be her jam. But I just laughed at like, okay, that's the power of different readers, I guess. So
yeah,
have your professors read your romance novels and they'll pick out different things.
Yeah, that it's like I was just gonna say, like, it's so funny the different things that different readers will like fixate on. Like, what was up with that? I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I don't even remember that being a detail. Or so that's so funny that like the tenure thing is what they latched on to.
I'm really just waiting. Well, maybe it's out there already, because we're not supposed, as authors, you're not supposed to read your reviews. I completely ignored that, and I read them all like top to bottom until I got a really rough one, and then I was like, nope, not doing this anymore, cold turkey, like cut that off. But I'm really waiting for my you know, like Amazon or Goodreads review that was like 1 star, too much sex, because I feel like that is kind of a romance writer like rite of passage. You can print that out and put it on your wall, frame it, whatever, but that's sort of like, I see that in a review and I'm like, oh, 1 click, like let me go buy that, let me order that, like let me download that, like that book is for me.
Yes, that I was just gonna say, if somebody is criticizing a book for too steamy or too many love scenes, I'm like, that book is going on my TBR immediately. Like that's no question there. Yeah, that's like, I think every person I know who's published like a romance book, they have gotten some sort of like negative comment about there being too much sex or love scenes or whatever. And yeah, you're right. Like I wear that like a badge of honor. I'm like, yup, I don't know. Like I remember getting a weird, like someone direct messaged me on Goodreads, and I don't want to go on there and like read negative reviews, so I don't do that. But so I clicked on it and I'm like, oh, okay. And the person was really upset with how steamy some of the love scenes in Faker were. And I was just like laughing. I was like, so like Faker, I'm like, there's a woman in bed next to a guy's hard hat. Like, what did you think this book was going to be about?
It doesn't really lend itself to the level of steam in your book, I would say.
Right? Yeah. I just, yeah. So it's just funny, the things that people fixate on. And I don't know, like, I mean, there are plenty of times when I read something that I don't like, or I watch something that I don't like, and I just like move on with my life. I would never think to contact the person who made that thing that I watched or wrote to tell them how much I didn't like it. Like it would never occur to me to do that. So
no, I'm in the same boat. Maybe that's just, you know, style or temperament or whatever, but I don't know. Like I said, that review could be out there now because I've committed to my cold turkey, and I just have a friend who goes and finds random 5-star ones and slides into my DMs every now and again. Just be like, hey, look at this great review you had. And I was like, don't send me any 2 stars. Don't want to know.
Aw, that's a really good friend to wade through the dumpster fire that is like review pages online. It's not saying that yours are. I'm just saying like in general, like, it's fun times being an author sometimes.
I kind of chuckle because I don't know where this sort of came from, but when I was a kid, I was super shy. Like I taught myself to sneeze silently so that nobody would notice me when I sneeze. And that sounds like sadder than it is. But I was very shy. Like I hated reading in front of the class. Like I would start crying and shaking, and like I did everything I could to kind of blend into the background, even when I was like performing, like in groups and things like that. And so I was catching up with somebody I hadn't talked to in a long time, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm an author, like, oh, reviews are out there, here's about the book. And she's like, you're in like this sort of public thing, that's really shocking. And I was like, oh yeah, that kind of changed. But like thinking about going from that space of really like never wanting anybody to even kind of notice me to putting myself in this forum where it's like, here's this thing I created, please judge it, is just this interesting kind of flip. And so many authors, I think, are in similar boats, like have been introverts or like love to get lost on the page. But that idea of sort of being in this proverbial spotlight is such an interesting kind of twist for so many of us.
Yeah, that's so funny that you describe yourself in that way, because I can definitely, excuse me, relate to that. And that I was super shy too when I was growing up, when I was a kid, and I hated attention. And I mean, I'd like to think that I don't consider myself a shy person anymore, but I'm definitely very introverted, and I don't go and seek out, I'm definitely not an outgoing person. So it is weird to think like, oh, here's this really intimate thing that I wrote for everybody to judge, both negative and positive. But I feel like there's still kind of like a safety wall of some sort, because like a lot of this is so like nobody knows who I am. Like nobody walks down the streets and like, oh, that's the author of these books. I'm just like a normal person. So so there's like a safety in that, I guess, because in my normal life, nobody knows what I do unless they know me, and that's great. But online, people can get a hold of you in a million different ways and tell you exactly how great or how awful they think you are, unfortunately. So that is weird that I ended up doing this. But it's amazing too. I feel like most of the feedback has been really positive, and it's cool to see my book out in the world and to have people relate to it and connect with it. That far outweighs any negative thing that could ever happen.
I've done, in my day job, part of what I do is diversity training and social justice training and teaching. And so somewhere along the lines of doing that, I kind of built that skin and that kind of thicker skin and got used to being in front of a crowd. And, I was, when I was leading that women's center, that women's seminar a couple weeks ago, we were talking about this idea of kind of channeling your inner mentor, which sounds a little hippy-dippy maybe, but it's really thinking about like, where do you find strength and power in yourself? And for me, it wasn't like being in this very calm space or like being in the mountains or being in a hot bath. It was being on stage and like holding a microphone. And for me, that's sort of that space where I'm like, I try to channel my inner Adam Sandler, who is generally problematic, but that line from The Wedding Singer, like, I have the microphone and you will listen to every word I have to say. But it's such like a powerful place for me to think about. And so when I am feeling low or like doubting myself, I actually imagine like I'm being interviewed by Oprah and like I'm on stage and we're having this conversation. And so like if Oprah ever calls me up, I'm gonna be ready, because I just like have these conversations with myself, not out loud, but kind of in my head of how would I answer this question or that question. But writing has really given me a good frame to explain that when I'm leading this seminar, because talking about meditation and imagining yourself in this sort of meadow just never worked for me. But thinking about like being in the spotlight now, again, it's just so ironic, for me is such like a centering space to think about being in, and writing has really kind of given that to me in a way that other things I do haven't in the same way.
I think that's awesome. I think that's a great, and I don't mean to call it like an exercise, but I think that's a great, like way that you're able to visualize yourself in that position of power, and you're not like, I feel like that shows that you are sure in yourself, and no matter what anybody says to you, that doesn't matter because you're the person in charge. Like, you're creating this art and you're putting it out in the world. And that, like, I think that's like, that requires a lot of like bravery and integrity and being sure of yourself, like as a creator and an artist. And I feel like Oprah is the champion of that. So when she does call you,
I mean, you know, sometimes other interviewers come in, like if Henry wants to pop over and do an interview, that's fine. I've got 45 minutes every day to, you know, kill this commute. But I do find that when I'm stressed that, and I don't know, that just sounds sort of odd, but yeah, I'll just do that pretend interview in my car and I just feel so like ready. I feel like I'm kind of ready to tackle whatever the issue is.
no, I honestly love that because I feel like there are, I think most people would, or I think most of us, we've had moments where like, you know, we doubt ourselves, and nobody would think twice about having like a moment where you're just inwardly doubting yourself or putting yourself down. Unfortunately, that's something that I think all of us do. So I think that there's nothing silly or wrong about building yourself up in your head, because you are worthy of that, you know, that positivity and that energy and that
Oh,
excitement.
I get a car every time. So, you know, it always goes well.
Did she do the whole, you get a car, you get a car? Because
You're in a car.
oh my gosh, that sounds, I love that. This is why I feel like we get along so well. I feel like that, I'm like, yes, I love that you do that. And I'm going to do that tomorrow when I'm feeling bad about myself, when I'm like hitting a roadblock in my revising process. I'm just going to like, Oprah's going to interview me. It's going to be just fine. Like it's,
yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I came up with that. I think I was stuck in traffic, but so I'm just speaking into the universe.
Ladies,
now, are there things that?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Can we open it up to questions from our two attendees?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Somebody has a
Do
question,
you have a
sure.
question?
I'm a fangirl. So I'm the sales rep for the store and for the entire West Country, and I have been the lucky pleasure of reading your books early and selling them to anybody who will listen to me. And it's 10 o'clock at night, and I just genuinely was so happy to hear you both. And I just, everything you've said, I'm like, you have new ones? You have new ones? I can't wait. Like, we literally, and I like truly could not support everything you're saying, because you're right. Like, we're all reading these we're reading the Goldfinch, but we're like, Berkeley, because nobody represents what is really being supported, especially in this time, let alone in the Renaissance. I feel like 2019 was a beautiful upheaval. You two are some of the truly most honed, stylized, truly, the dialogue is current. We read a lot of garbage, and we read like so it really shows, like when you're like, it is such a pleasure just to hear your internal monologues, to know where it's coming from. I can take this to the rest of the accounts, anybody else that will listen to me on the street, and just be able to say, like, you don't know what you're missing, because I mean, I just want to like follow and hear more of what you both have to say, because like, it just, everything from social justice to academia to being like, one of my other colleagues who wanted to be on the call, she's also half Filipino. And like, so she's just like, there's so much empathy toward, we don't listen to the stories that should be told. And it's just, so this is a very long diatribe of going, I love you. So we're going to sell all your books. And
we're totally cool with everything you just said.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Thank you, Julie. That's amazing. You have no idea what that means. Thank you so much, really.
I really likewise. And that's where, you know, because you're right, the way that you have revitalized, changed, and revolutionized. Forgive me, I've also been drinking since 7. So you've also changed. It's something different, and people have now. Because I grew up reading bodice rippers, and you're right, the way that you're like, aren't you going to read something serious? It's something that no one appreciates, the multi-generational, the family connections, the abuse. And you both write stories that are not like the first time, this is my first time in love, which is something that we are all yearning for, but it does not happen. And we don't get a chance to be able to say, I have maturity, I have chutzpah, I have a reason why I'm going into this with justified backing and experience. And then to have culture and perspective and age and a 4-year-old, like literally, I have so much respect, and it is the more you give to me, the more I'm just going to, because like literally, Sarah, when you said, and I forgive me for being so personal,
No.
when you had even said like nobody sees you on the street, when after Faker, and then to come out with Simmer Down, I was like, I have the new Sarah Smith. And people listen to that because they know you, they know and they respect, because this is my region. I have Dudley's, and to be able to have Roundabout is just, it's a very lucky region to have. And then to also have Phil flirting, and forgive me also for being so personal in this way of being able to go in to be able to say, there are so many books that are about abuse and about the abuse that we have, and we have no value because it's not seen. And then to say, I not only have your book, I have a happy ending because she has value. And then to be able to say, you give them the chance to see the characters for who they want to see them as, because you're right, neither one of you gave, besides, I'm always now going to see this Australian and be happy, but you both give the chance to be able to give all the characters in intimacy beyond the intimacy. And I just hope you both keep writing so I can keep telling people about you.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that means, seriously, thank you so much. That means the world. And I'm going to keep writing until people take my computer away from me. So I don't have any plans to stop. I hope, Denise, same thing for you.
Same boat. My laptop keyboard stopped working this summer. And so I had it was very old school. I had an external keyboard running through a series of ports to have my laptop propped up on something that could still be moved around the forefront. So I kept writing. So no, that is exciting, and I'll be happy when we can travel again, because I feel like so much of publishing is in New York, and so many of the folks are there and on the East Coast. And just like all of these people who I've been talking with for years, who are championing my book, and who I have this like close relationship with, who I've never met in person. And I'm in Iowa, and much of publishing and much of every industry that is in agriculture isn't here. And so, everybody's kind of on the coast, and so I'll be excited when I can travel again and meet everybody in person and see everybody in person again.
I have to agree with Jillian that I definitely fangirl, because Sarah, like, your first event with us was so much fun. You were so nice, and when we got the new book, we were going to have it signed. But one of the things that gets me is, I'm an editor, and so I read other people's work, and I'm trying to participate in NaNoWriMo right now, but unfortunately the brain no worky. But what's really interesting from my perspective is I am still so in awe of the creative process behind what authors put out. Like, there is a point where even in my head, as I'm reading these manuscripts that I'm editing, and I'm like, how did you come up with that? How did you string those words together in a way that either now I'm laughing or I'm like gonna cry or something? I read a book I guess it was summer, I edited a book for a man in Mexico City that was like, I would call it literary fiction, but at the same time, like, as I was reading it, I was just like, I hope this gets published because this is so beautiful. But that's where I am, is like, as a bookseller, as an editor, I look at authors as like, that's my definition of a rock star, because I still sometimes don't understand how you string those words together, or when we're talking about your characters, how do you write a character that either when you're reading it, you could go, oh man, I see myself, or, oh man, this person could be my best friend. I could totally see meeting this person on the street or in the whatever and just being like, hey, I like you. It's just something that I think is so special about the brain of a writer.
Yeah.
I think I definitely have favorites, and Sarah's definitely one of them, where I'm reading and thinking the same thing, like, oh my gosh, am I ever going to write as well as this person? But you just hear these phrases, and Kennedy Ryan is probably the author that I read that I think this, just like every sentence of her books, but just like how can I ever like craft something so beautiful where I want to highlight like every other sentence and put it up on my wall or send it to my mom, or and so I kind of love that about writing too, is that you can always see that in other people and like strive for that, and look at how other people play with words and use words to convey these different things, and how you can do that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Denise, I thank you. And I also felt that way when I was reading How to Fail at Flirting. Like, it was such a beautiful, and it is such a beautiful book, but like you were able to weave like the lightness and happiness of a romance rom-com, but also like bring in a very serious issue like domestic abuse, which is something sadly that a lot of people have dealt with. But it helps. I think that makes your book and your story feel so real too, because not everything's just like happiness and joy and 6-pack abs and hookups at the bar. You know, like it's real and it's gritty and it sucks sometimes, but you can have a happily ever after too.
Yeah, you know, happy and hook up at the bar was what I started writing. Just didn't work out that way. But and sorry, I'm muting. My dog is barking outside my window.
Well, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Again, both of Sarah's books, Faker and Simmer Down, are available at the bookstore. We will have How to Fail at Flirting as soon as it's available. And me personally, I know several people in my family who are probably going to get these books for Christmas because, as I like to tell Sarah, my mom read Faker in 2 days. We were at the coast in February. I had it right before her, maybe it was January, right before her event. And my mom was like, I need a book that I just like, just give me something. And I was like, here. And she was like, this is so fun.
Aww.
I know. Yeah.
I had the audiobook of Faker, and I was driving out to Omaha and back. And I just, when I got to Omaha, I dropped my kid off with my parents, and then I just like drove around for a while so I could listen to it a little bit longer.
Oh my gosh, you guys are amazing. Thank you.
Thank you everybody for being here. Stop by the store. We're open every day 10 to 5. We're going to extend for holiday hours right after Thanksgiving, but we are so appreciative of everyone who has helped Roundabout remain open during this time, you know, in whatever form, whether it's online orders, calling in, picking up off our cute little red bench out front. We couldn't do it without you. We couldn't do it without these amazing authors, amazing sales reps, our customers. It takes a village, and Roundabout Books is so grateful for the village that we have.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having us, and thinking good sales and lots of people buying books for the winter.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You pretty much know you're going to get galleys. First stop. Thank you. And I feel bad that it's so intimate, but I'm so elated that I got to be able to have this time with you all. Thank you as well.
Thank you for joining us. Yeah.
Yeah, it was such a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, I wish everyone a happy weekend. Hopefully we'll have less stress next week about all the things that are going on in the world. But as always, we look to books and the amazing authors behind them as an escape. And that's all we can ask for.
I'm so honored to be anybody's escape. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
We get t-shirts made.
Right?
Wear this shirt. Sorry. Yes.
So much fun. All right. Well, until next time, thank you again, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks.